guys, it's Laura. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing my mid-month wrap-up. I actually read some really incredible books so far this month and want to talk to you about them. So I have 8 books that I want to talk about. I have been reading a lot this month, so let's go ahead and get into it because there's quite a few to get through. So the first book I finished this month was Gideon the Knight by Tamsin Muir. This is a very interesting story and I really don't know how to explain it, so bear with me. So in this world, there are 9 houses. The first house consists of the emperor and kind of like the ruling class, and then there's all the subsequent houses. So we're following Gideon, who is from the 9th house, and all she wants to do is escape her life in the 9th house. She hates it. It's dark. There's skeletons everywhere. And she just wants to leave. She finally has procured the means of her escape, but things don't turn out the way she wants them to, because Harrow, who is the reverend daughter and heir to the 9th house, has a proposition for her. The first house has ordered each heir of the other houses to come and compete in this competition to become a lictor. Along with that title comes immortality as well, I believe. But in order for Harrow to go, she needs a cavalier. And her cavalier is gone, so she needs Gideon to go in his place. So her and Harrow end up going to the first house, and when they get there, things start going horribly wrong. They're in this haunted mansion, and someone or something is after all of them, and they're slowly getting picked off one by one. So we have not only this competition thing going on, but a murder mystery as well. And I actually really enjoyed this, even though I have to say I did not understand a lot of it. There was a lot I could not wrap my head around, mostly around the world, and I couldn't really get a clear picture of what this world looked like and kind of how the political system worked. That's what really confused me. A lot of the magic and the necromancy and how that worked. I thought that it was really interesting, and I loved getting to see the necromancers use their powers. That was great. But what really made me love this book was Gideon herself. She is so hilarious. She is sarcastic and reactionary and just very realistic, and I loved her so much. I also loved the relationship between Gideon and Harrow because they hate each other and the banter between the two, the back and forth, was amazing. I loved it so much. I laughed so much reading this book, even though I was thoroughly confused as well. So, I mean, this could have been anywhere from a 2-star to a 5-star for me. I ended up giving it a 4 out of 5 stars because I just adored Gideon so much, and Harrow, and a lot of the side characters as well. And I enjoyed the story. There was just a lot that I was confused by. And I think this is a book that I really need to reread in order to get a better understanding of the world and whatnot. But I just felt like even when things were explained to us, they weren't explained in a way that I could understand. So because of that, it was a little bit disappointing, but the characters really pulled it through for me. And like I said, I ended up giving it a 4 out of 5 stars, and I highly recommend. The next book I finished this month was Stepsister by Jennifer Donnelly, and oh my goodness, this book was incredible. So in this book, we are following one of the ugly stepsisters, Isabel, from the classic Cinderella story. And when we come into the story, we're kind of at the end of Cinderella's story where the prince and the duke are out with the slipper, trying it on every maiden's foot. When they finally get to their house, Isabel's mother makes her cut off her toes in order to fit in the shoe. And really the cutting off of the toes was very symbolic for how she cut off so many pieces of herself, figuratively, to become the person or the lady that her mother wanted her to become, but also the lady that society at the time expected her to be. Isabel is incredibly smart and incredibly skilled in swordplay and knowledge of things like battle strategies, and ever since she was a little girl, all she wanted to do was carry a sword, and instead she was told that she was a lady, and lady didn't do things like that. And it was so incredibly great getting to know more about Isabel and find out why she was so cruel. Why she was so cruel to Cinderella, and all of the cruelty that she experienced from her mother, how that changed her and shaped her into the person she is now. And what was also really unique about this story is that we're introduced to some characters. We have the Fates in here, the maiden, the mother, and the crone. And we also have the embodiment of Chance, which is in a character named Chance. I just thought it was so unique and so interesting how these ideas were embodied in characters, even though the Fates had decided that Isabel's life was going to go one way, and then we had Chance that came in and wanted to switch things up for Isabel. It really showed that the only force and the only person in charge of your life is you. And it's all about the decisions that you make and the person that you want to be, and finding the pieces of your heart and your passion and the things that make you you. And it was so beautifully done. I loved the kind of lessons that were in here, as well as the social commentary, how we view beauty as a society, how beauty in these times was the most important thing that a woman can have, and even that carries into today as well, of how much importance we put on beauty. And it was all done in a way that was not preachy, but was just so seamlessly woven into the narrative of the story. There were so many quotes in here that were just amazing, and that I will think of and go back to time and time again. And I love this book so much. I loved it so much. I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. I highly, highly recommend it. I definitely think this is one that you should pick up. It was beautiful, beautifully written, and just a stunning, stunning novel. I'm excited to read more from Jennifer Donnelly. This is the first book I've ever read by her, but I think she does have quite a few backlist books as well. So I'm excited to check those out. And this is definitely a favorite of the year for me. I absolutely loved this. Next, I'm going to talk about The Grown Up by Gillian Flynn, or I'm not going to talk about it too much actually, because this is a very short story. I've read everything else by Gillian Flynn and I absolutely adore all of her books, but I hadn't read this one yet, so I went ahead and picked it up, and I didn't like it. I wouldn't say that I hated it, because all throughout the story I really enjoyed the atmosphere and I really thought that it was building up to something great, but it wasn't. And I'm not really going to say too much about what this is about because it is so short, but it involves a con artist, a haunted house, a child that may or may not be a sociopath, and handjobs. So there you go. I gave it a 2 out of 5 stars, didn't like it very much, and let's move on. So the next book I want to talk about is The Devouring Grey by Christine Lynn Herman. This is another one that got a lot of buzz when it first came out. It was compared a lot to Stranger Things, and I definitely got those vibes while reading it. But also, as far as the interaction with the characters, it was like a really great CW drama. And I don't know about you, but I adore CW shows, so it was actually really enjoyable for me. So this takes place in a small little town in upstate New York called Four Paths. Four Paths was founded by these 4 people who came together and saved the town from this monster. And within this town is something called the Grey, which is basically another dimension. And this other dimension is basically a prison for this monster. So we're now following the descendants of those 4 people, and we find out that they have powers, and their powers help them to protect the town against this monster who is constantly trying to escape the bonds of his prison. However, when we come into the story, the town is not doing so well. People are afraid because the monster is getting stronger and stronger. People are going missing. People are being found dead in the woods. And it seems because this prison is getting looser and looser, and the bonds on this beast are getting looser, and he's trying to escape, basically. The 4 teenagers that are the descendants of the founders try to save the town from this monster, as well as a new human threat. And I loved everything about this. I loved the atmosphere. It was so great. I loved the creepy woods with something lurking inside. And I loved these characters so much. So first we have Violet Saunders, who has just moved to this town, although her mother grew up there and she is one of the founding families, though she did not know that before moving there, and she's discovering her powers for the first time. And then we have Justin Hawthorne, who has recently discovered that he does not have any powers at all. And then we have Isaac, who is this broody but really sweet boy. And then we have Harper, who is holding this grudge on Justin. He abandoned her when she got stuck in the gray for 3 days and lost her hand as a result. We have all that going on, and the dynamic of the characters and how they interacted with each other, and the drama that went on between them while trying to keep the town safe from this monster and also help Violet, who is completely new to the situation. I just thought everything was perfect. I loved it so much. And it was just really, really fun. And like I said, this really did feel like a CW show, but in all of the best ways. So I ended up giving The Devouring Grey a 5 out of 5 stars. I cannot wait for the next book in the series. I am so excited because this was amazing and I cannot wait for more. Next, I read All the Bad Apples by Moira Fowley-Doyle. So this I picked up on a whim. I had seen it going around on BookTube, and I thought that this was a spooky, atmospheric sort of book, perfect for this time of the year, and the first half of it was. So this book basically follows a girl named Dina. This is set in Ireland, by the way, and Dina's sister has disappeared, and then it is later believed that she committed suicide, that she jumped from a cliff even though her body was never recovered. And after having a funeral for her, Dina starts to discover these letters from her dead sister that keep showing up and giving little bits of her family history, and on the other side is an address, and she goes to that address and she finds another letter. I definitely thought that this was going to be more supernatural than it was. The first half of this book I absolutely loved. I loved the atmosphere. I loved the suspense and the creepiness. And then the second half of this book veered into something totally different. It was more contemporary, where we were finding out more about the history of Dina's family and about this curse that is on her family, but it turned out being less supernatural and more hard-hitting contemporary. It was very hard-hitting, let me tell you. There were parts of this book that were extremely hard to read, so definitely look up trigger warnings for this because it involves topics of abortion, forced pregnancies, rape and sexual assaults, religious abuse. It was a lot, guys. It was a lot, and I was not expecting that at all. Really don't like to read about. I don't handle it well. When I came across that, it was really hard to read. What was even harder was knowing that this was based on a lot of fact, of things that were going on in Ireland at the time and even into modern times. Ireland is a heavily religious Catholic country, and I had no idea of the atrocities that were happening to women. And I can't even really properly talk about it because of the emotional impact that it had on me. The second half of this book is like someone screaming, "Don't look away. I know it's hard, but here are stories." And it was so powerful and beautiful. It really was, but it was a lot for me. I ended up giving this book a 3 out of 5 stars. I do recommend it. I think it's something that everyone should read, but I definitely think that you should look up trigger warnings before you do because it gets very intense. I really don't think that I was mentally prepared to read it, but I am glad that I did. Next, I'm going to talk about Salk Girls by Claire Legrand. This book was the perfect book. Do you know that moment when you finish reading a book and you just hold the book to your chest because you just loved it so much? That was me in this book. So this is another YA thriller horror type novel. We are following 3 main characters. The first one is Marion. Marion has just moved to the island of Salk Hill Rock with her sister and her mother after the death of her father. Her mother decides that they all need a fresh start, so they move out here where the mother becomes a caretaker for this mansion where our second main character lives, and that is Val. Val is this queen bee, privileged, beautiful, ruthless teenage girl. And then our third main character is Zoe, and Zoe is the daughter of is he the chief of police, I think? or the sheriff, chief of police, I guess. And she's definitely considered an outsider on the island. She's very different. She dresses very differently. She stands out a lot. And the three girls' lives intertwine. They end up coming together despite their differences and their prejudices. They come together to defeat this evil that has been causing the disappearance of girls for decades, and no one has done anything about it. And this is a book that was just so full of girl power and feminist themes, and I absolutely adored this book. The atmosphere was incredible. We have the isolation of the island as well as these creepy woods where a monster lurks. And then we have Claire Legrand's amazingly beautiful writing, as well as these incredible characters that were so complex and well developed and diverse. We've got Marion, who is a girl who loves other girls, as well as Val. And then Zoe, who is Black and asexual and is just coming to terms with the fact that she is asexual. I loved the interaction between characters, how they may have hated each other because of social status or whatever, but how those differences were put aside in order to put a stop to this. And it really shows the strength of girls and women and what they can do. And it was just so powerful and so beautiful, and I loved it so much. This is another favorite of the year for me. I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. I adored it, and I definitely recommend you pick it up. This is a perfect book to read during this time of year too as well. Definitely got that creepy, atmospheric type feel, and it's perfect for the month of October. I'm so glad that I picked this book up. And the next book was another one that I really, really adored. That's And the Trees Crept In, and this is by Dawn Kurtagich. This book, I listened to this on audio, and I have to tell you, before I tell you anything else, this was the best audiobook I have ever listened to in my life. The audiobook production deserves a 5 stars. It was so good. It was so good. But let me tell you what this is about. So basically we're following a girl named Scylla and her younger sister Nori, and they have escaped a very abusive father and have come to live with their aunt, who lives in this very isolated mansion out in the middle of nowhere, basically. It's all surrounded by woods. Yet another story with spooky woods. I love it. But it's completely isolated. They go and live with their aunt because they were being abused by their father, and they finally found a chance to escape. And things are going great for them for a while until one day when their aunt loses her mind. She locks herself in the attic and never comes back out. And the trees surrounding the house are starting to get closer and closer and closer each day. And that's all I'm going to say about it, because it is such a wild ride. It is so fun to discover what's going on for yourself. I had so much fun guessing what the heck was going on and what was going to happen next, because I had absolutely no idea. This was so suspenseful and so good. Not only that, but like I said, the audiobook, if the story would mention that it was raining outside, you would start to hear rain and thunder. There were so many sound effects. There was also really like suspenseful music whenever something was happening in the book. Oh my goodness. It was the best audiobook I've ever listened to. I highly recommend that if you read this book, definitely listen to the audiobook, because it was so, so good. And it was creepy. I don't know if I had read this physically, if I would have been as scared as I was listening to the audiobook, but I was scared. I was terrified. I was listening to this at night, and I had to have a light on. That's how scared I was. So this book is perfect for this time of year. Highly recommend. I cannot wait to get my greedy little hands on everything that Dawn Kurtagich has ever written, because I need to read all of her books now, because that one was just so good. Oh my God. I ended up giving it a 4 out of 5 stars instead of a 5, just because of the ending, and it didn't go where I expected it to go. The ending kind of came out of nowhere. I had no idea. Like, I did not expect it at all. And not that I didn't like it. I did like the ending, but not as much as I thought I would. But I still highly recommend this book. I think it is fantastic. I loved it. And then finally, the very last book that I picked up in the first half of the month was The OK Witch and this is by Emma Steinkeldner. I probably said that wrong, I'm sorry. But this is a really cute middle grade graphic novel, and it follows this little girl named Moth, and she is obsessed with witches and witchy things, and she always has been, but she never knew that she herself is actually a witch. Her mom kind of never mentioned that to her, and she discovers her powers one day and also discovers the amazing, crazy history of her past and her family and kind of what happened in the town that she lives in. Things get totally out of control, and she ends up meeting this adorable, big, fluffy black cat who can talk, and she ends up falling into an enchanted diary and learning more about her past that way as well. And it was so much fun. I absolutely loved this. I think that this is another perfect book to read for the season. It was funny, it was smart, and it was so, so cute, and I absolutely adore the art style in here. Is really, really pretty. Taking off on a broom. It was just so much fun, and it was about friendship and family and coming together and forgiveness, and I loved it. It was perfect. I ended up giving it a 4 out of 5 stars, and I would definitely read more books by this author in the future. But that is it. I have actually lost my voice. I think I'm coming down with a cold because my throat has been a little bit sore. But after doing all that talking, it's like mostly gone now. So I hope you enjoyed. Do let me know down in the comments below if you've read any of these books and what you thought of them. I would love to know. If you liked this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button if you would like to see more videos from me. But I'm gonna go drink some water, and I will see you in my next video. Bye guys!